Director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
WinGuard, a marketing and communications agency designing websites from concept to clicks, is dedicated to helping businesses and nonprofits tell their story, capture the right audience, and deliver results. More at wearewinguard.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Dan Scanlon in for Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a contract dispute between two Jacksonville-based health institutions leaves patients in Northeast Florida uncertain about the future of their health care. Then can over-the-counter overdose reversal drugs help combat the opioid and fentanyl crisis? And commemorating the 60th anniversary of the Beatles concert in Jacksonville, plus a unique church service that combines meditation with yoga and dance. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. Email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also tag us on Facebook, Instagram, or X. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Washington on Corva Coleman, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz formally accepted his party's vice presidential nomination last night at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. From Minnesota Public Radio, Clay Masters has more.
The Harris campaign has Governor Walz leaning hard into his background as a high school teacher and football coach. He told the crowd it was his students who encouraged him to run for Congress in 2006.
So there I was, a 40-something high school teacher with little kids, zero political experience, and no money, running in a deep red district. But you know what? Never underestimate a public school teacher.
Walz served in the U.S. House until he ran for governor in 2018. He's had just 2 weeks to introduce himself to voters since current Vice President Kamala Harris selected him to be her running mate. For NPR News, I'm Clay Masters in Chicago.
Harris will formally accept the Democratic Party's presidential nomination tonight. Pro-Palestinian uncommitted delegates are doing a sit-in outside the convention. From member station WDET, Russ McNamara reports this comes after Democratic Party leadership would not allow a Palestinian American to address the convention.
Abbas Alawiya, a delegate from Michigan and co-founder of the Uncommitted National Movement, says he had been in contact with the Vice President Harris campaign and was told no.
I'm deeply offended that this level of suppression would happen in today's Democratic Party.
Palestinian-American Georgia State Representative Rua Roman says it's not about her being denied a chance to speak.
It's about the fact that today I watched my party say our tent can fit anti-choice Republicans, but it can't fit an elected official like me. I do not understand.
Parents of a Jewish man held captive by Hamas spoke at the convention Wednesday, calling for a ceasefire and the safe return of all remaining hostages. For NPR News, I'm Russ McNamara in Chicago.
Former President Donald Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, are campaigning today. Vance will meet supporters in Georgia. Trump is going to the southern U.S. border in Arizona. He's expected to criticize the Biden administration on immigration. Both Republicans will campaign together tomorrow in the Phoenix area. A former Las Vegas area official has taken the stand in his murder trial. Robert Tellis is accused of slaying investigative journalist Jeff Gehrman nearly 2 years ago at the reporter's home. Tellis says that he is innocent, and yesterday on the witness stand he claimed a real estate company, Compass Realty, is behind the killing.
Somebody framed me for this, and I believe that it's Compass Realty, and I believe that it's for the work that I've done against them.
Gehrman, the reporter who was killed, had written several articles revealing turmoil and alleged wrongdoing in Robert Tellis' office. You're listening to NPR.
This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Michelle Coram. A 19-year-old homicide cold case has been reopened by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office to find out how 28-year-old Andre Johnson died and who killed him. Police say Johnson's body was found June 23, 2005 on Ribault Scenic Drive. The discovery was made a few days after his mother reported him missing. Cold case detective Harmony Brooks says Johnson had not been seen for about a week before then, and it's hoped that someone remembers having seen him.
150 yards to the east of his location was the Lim Turner Bridge that runs about the 8500 block of Lim Turner Road. To anybody familiar with the Northside area, directly across the Ribault River where he was located is a boat ramp. We believe he was either put in the river at the boat ramp or from the bridge.
And that was from the cold case video that's on the JSO's Facebook page. Police say Johnson's death was the result of blunt force trauma. Anyone with information can contact the sheriff's office. Farm Share is back with a pair of food distribution events in Northeast Florida this week and weekend. The state's largest food bank is hosting the first event Friday at Walaka Town Hall in Putnam County. That starts at 9. The second event is at the Cornerstone Church in McClenny, starting at 10 o'clock Saturday. There's a high rip current risk for today around our coastal counties. The temperature will be near 86 degrees. Good chance of thunderstorms later.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include C3 AI. C3 Generative AI works to enable rapid access to traceable, hallucination-free insights from enterprise systems, helping turn the invisible into the obvious. This is Enterprise AI.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
And good morning. I'm Dan Scanlon in for Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a contract dispute between two Jacksonville-based health institutions leaves patients in Northeast Florida uncertain about the future of their health care. Later in the program, some good news. Opioid overdose deaths in Florida are down for the first half of 2024. But first, an impasse in hospital insurer contract negotiations between Baptist Hospital and Florida Blue could have some costly repercussions for patients. To discuss that, we are joined by Jacksonville Today reporter Will Brown. Good morning, Will.
Good morning, Dan.
Before we get started, I want to disclose that Florida Blue and Baptist Health are both financial supporters of WJCT Public Media. Will, first question here. What is the primary issue here regarding this deadlock? Because we both know the names of these companies.
Yes, their healthcare costs are rising. Both Florida Blue, who's the health insurance provider, and Baptist Health, who's the largest health system in Northeast Florida, agree that there have been health costs that have increased since the worst of the pandemic in March 2020. And because of that, there's a discussion, debate, impasse, negotiations currently about the hospital-insurer agreement, which essentially is how much Florida Blue pays to Baptist to reimburse in-network services.
Now, folks, you should know that Will has been covering this intensely over the past few weeks. I've been listening to him do his interviews, and he has had some amazing interviews. So you interviewed Dr. Timothy Groover. He's the chief medical officer at Baptist Health. You also interviewed Tony Jenkins of Florida Blue. They both indicated they want this to be settled and to continue to partner. So let's hear what they had to say in their own words. First, Dr. Groover of Baptist Health.
Our goal is not to panic the community, but our goal, as Dr. Mayo said, is to inform the community, because I think the biggest tool that I can give you is information so that you can make proper preparations as we enter this period. Our goal, our number one goal, is to reach an agreement by September 30th with Florida Blue. We have to. And I think that the amount of good that both of these organizations bring to the table, it has to be preserved.
I'm an optimist, but we cannot come to an agreement if both of our intentions are not working towards partnership. I know ours is. We want an agreement. We want to make sure that we are providing high quality, affordable health care to this region.
So that first voice was Dr. Timothy Groover, Chief Medical Officer from Baptist Health. The second voice, Tony Jenkins of Florida Blue. And our guest today, Will Brown, did interview them both. So before we get into the terms, Will, the deadline, as we heard, is September 30th. The negotiations have been ongoing since February. So what happens if they cannot reach an agreement?
Well, I should start by saying they both are confident that they will reach an agreement. Both Dr. Groover and Tony Jenkins, who's the market president for Florida Blue, they are both Jacksonville natives. They both grew up here. They both realize the importance of both of those organizations because of their deep ties to Jacksonville. But what will happen on September 30th is Florida Blue customers, or members as they call them, will be out of network, which fantastically adds to the cost. I spoke with one union leader, Tammy Brooks Evans. She's the president of the Duval Teachers United. And their union has 5,000 members, represents 7,000 people, arguably one of the biggest unions in Northeast Florida. They all have Florida Blue. And she said to me specifically that out-of-network costs are astronomical compared to in-network costs, and that this is something their membership has discussed.
So how many customers are we talking about total? Is there any idea of the significance of this?
Florida Blue has said that more than 50,000 different people have used Baptist Health over the last 6 months. And that's 6 months of this year. Dr. Groover also mentioned that, on a daily basis, and not all of these are Florida Blue consumers, obviously, but Florida Blue is the largest insurer in the state of Florida, with more than 30% of all people with health insurance having Florida Blue. And Florida Blue, the percentages aren't available for Jacksonville and Northeast Florida, but both Florida Blue and Baptist and third-party analysts agree that Florida Blue has the largest market share in Jacksonville and Northeast Florida for health insurance. So Baptist sees 1,000 patients at its hospitals a day, does 400,000 ER visits annually, and 800,000 primary care visits annually. So these are two titans of our health insurance and healthcare industries.
Certainly visible on the skyline of the city, almost no matter where you go. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the Florida Blue and Baptist Health impasse. You can join the conversation live on air by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media. So, Will, what are some of the local organizations that I know you've mentioned, DTU, the Teachers United, but what are the local organizations somewhere that contract with Florida Blue for these employee benefits, so we can maybe get an idea of what sectors of our population?
In addition to Duval Teachers, St. John's Teachers are also Florida Blue members. JEA employees are Florida Blue members. Clay County government employees are Florida Blue members. And those are the public sector. There are scores of private businesses, but obviously their benefits packages aren't available online as readily, who also use Florida Blue as their health insurance option. The safe assumption is that Florida Blue has no fewer than 15% of the local health insurance marketplace. That number is probably higher than that, but a safe assumption from speaking to Florida Blue and Baptist is
and with
that 15%.
With the large number of health institutions in this region, 15% is actually a pretty large number for one group. I can understand that. So along with those are those who have plans through the Affordable Care Act, Florida Blue. So let's take a listen to what Florida Blue's market president for Orlando and Jacksonville, his name is Tony Jenkins, had to say.
Baptist leaders have shared with us that if we don't agree to their excessive terms, then they are not going to serve our members that have signed up for marketplace plans or the Affordable Care Act plans. Think about it. These are the individuals that are typically your lower income folks, most vulnerable, and they have signed up for plans, and they've received, a lot of them, subsidies because they may not be able to afford a full cost of a plan, but they have coverage now. They have insurance now. And there are about 14,000 individuals that are on those plans.
And that was Tony Jenkins. He is the Florida Blue market president for Orlando and Jacksonville. So what is holding Florida Blue back from agreeing to Baptist's proposal?
Well, there are two things right now. The first of which is speaking with Dr. Groover and Mr. Michael Mayo, who's the president and CEO of Baptist Health, last week, they've mentioned that Baptist would like a 5-year hospital insurer agreement. Florida Blue has mentioned as recently as yesterday that they would prefer a 3-year deal. Now, where those negotiations are, they know. We don't. But another thing that is an impasse or kind of standing between the two right now is, healthcare costs have increased. There's studies that have indicated just how much healthcare costs have increased, and Baptist has said that the increase of healthcare costs is not increase. Their reimbursement is not increasing as much as their healthcare costs are increasing, and so they're looking to close that gap, per se, of how much the medical cost for drugs and supplies and labor is increasing. They want to be reimbursed more to cover up that gap.
We have a phone call, and there's a question about another hospital. So, Blake, you're on the north side. What's your question?
Well, my question is simple. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Obviously, and I may be oversimplifying here, but this question boils down to money, right? And I just thought we could get to the quick of it, get into the actual trench of it. Does Florida Blue feel like Baptist should cough up a little more? Is that the basic issue here? And my feeling on the issue is if that's the case, so then I think they should. I think Baptist is probably doing really well. They're like McDonald's. They sell a lot of burgers. And a lot of us are relying on Florida Blue. I have it. I work for a large construction company here in the city, and we all have it, and I'm counting on it to work. And I just want to know if we can, if that's the actual case, if it's that simple of a construct.
Thank you very much. Well, remember, Will Brown here, reporter from Jacksonville Today, is covering this issue. So we throw the question to you, Will.
Yeah. I would say that there is an impasse over money. Florida Blue has claimed that Baptist's negotiations would add to what Florida Blue claims add up to nearly $900 million over the next 5 years, which would then be passed on to members. That's what Florida Blue claims. Baptist says the number is not that high. Now, the documents between how much it will cost, neither one of them felt super comfortable disclosing, in part because they're going through a negotiation, and they're both very hopeful that they will complete and have an agreement by September 30th.
That's what they're saying. Florida Blue obviously saying that there's some issues, but how is Baptist responding to this whole thing when you're talking about the he said?
Well, Baptist is saying that costs are increasing, and because the costs are increasing, they have to do something. They've mentioned inflationary pressures, which, again, third-party analysts have indicated that there are prices that are, things that are higher. PricewaterhouseCoopers came out with an analysis earlier this year that said medical cost growth heading into 2025 is the highest year-over-year leap in 13 years. The previous agreement between Florida Blue and Baptist was 3 years. So what Baptist is essentially saying is our costs have increased. We need financial security from our health insurance, the people who we have health insurance agreements with, so that we can continue to provide the same care that we have consistently provided since 1955.
Will, sitting in the same newsroom with you, I hear you working, and I know you were working this story very intently. You've spoken with a lot of people, more than probably some other outlets. So you spoke with Michael Mayo, President and Chief Executive for Baptist Health, and here is what he had to say about reimbursement.
So like many health systems across the country in recent years, we have had serious labor shortage, increase in workforce costs, increase in supply costs, drug supplies, etc., all due to external factors that are beyond our control. And these factors build up over time. It's a compounding effect over the years, and it makes a gap unsustainable. And so we're seeking to fill that gap with a fair payment system from Florida Blue.
And well, as you've said, there's been certainly concerns about reimbursement. Florida Blue claims Baptist reimbursement demands would be financially catastrophic. So let's go back into that again. How so?
Well, they're saying that it would add costs to healthcare. Now, I am not a hospital administrator. I'm a journalist, and so I can't prove how much this will increase costs. But I did specifically ask Florida Blue's Tony Jenkins, will this increase cost for consumers, regardless of what the agreement is? And it is entirely possible that once this agreement is finalized, because they both believe one will be finalized, that people who have health insurance may pay a little bit more in premiums.
Okay, and now some of the notes that we've got here: $1.2 billion in added costs over 5 years. Baptist disagrees, argues Florida Blue is creating a false narrative and not properly mathing.
Well, I will safely say that I was not a math major in college, though I did ace a couple college math classes. But what I can say is what differs from this negotiation is how public it has been. Because we mentioned earlier Tammy Brooks Evans with Duval, with the teachers union. She specifically mentioned like 4 years ago that Baptist had similar negotiations with, I think, Florida Memorial Healthcare, which really has a number of hospitals in South Florida, but has a facility here. And that agreement was supposed to end at the end of August 2020, and it took them a couple extra weeks, and they finally reached an agreement in October of 2020. But she says this feels different. This negotiation feels different. Florida Blue has said they were a bit taken aback at how public these negotiations have been. There is a state statute 627.6043, that says a health insurer must give 45-day written notice of cancellation, non-renewal, or change in rates. And so earlier this month, Florida Blue has sent out letters to its members because of that law, because that 45-day window has begun.
Well, we're stacking up a lot of phone calls here with some comment or thoughts on this. Let's go first to Renata in Mandarin. Good morning, Renata.
Hi, nice to be with you. But this is so frustrating to me as a consumer. I and the previous caller had touched upon it. Is it about the money? So my question is, take a look at what the bonuses are for the CEO of Florida Blue as well as the hospital. And why doesn't that money filter down to us consumers to lower premiums? So nobody wants to give up, any money. And, they're trying to do their best, to cut costs here and there. But who benefits? It's not us, the consumers. It's the people in C-suite. So that's my comment, and I'd like to hear your input.
Thanks, Renata. Will, we always hear about what the CEO makes.
All I can say is both CEOs make more than I do. So that's about where I'll go. What they make is, it's something I can certainly look into. I had not looked into it yet. But I mean, that's a fair perception.
We're well aware that there were issues with COVID and lots of ER visits. We had a lot of burnout from nurses. Nurses were leaving. There's a nursing shortage nationwide. So those are issues there.
To that point, that is something Dr. Groover mentioned specifically, is that during the worst of the pandemic, people were holding off on healthcare things that they could have. Like if you had heart issues, you weren't going to the hospital because COVID was very rampant. And so what Groover has said, from a physician's standpoint, because he is a physician, and the day we spoke, he had actually done a surgery earlier that day, is people are coming to the hospital sicker now than they were before the onset of the pandemic, because there'd been so many years of people kind of putting their healthcare aside, or not visiting the hospital as much, or not visiting their physician as much because of concerns about COVID.
We got another call here. We've got Linda from Mandarin. Linda, you have some question about the lack of options in the insurance market, right?
Well, I think in America, with our capitalism, we always say, competition lowers costs. Well, what we're seeing is we've got hometown companies on each side, and it probably sounded good when companies got these big plans with the hometown hero, but when there's an impasse, I guess there's a lack of viable options. You go with the people you know, but right now in a crunch, everything has shifted since COVID. So businesses need to rethink what they did in their contract pre-COVID, post-COVID. You need a COLA index or a contract extension or something, but right now it's leaving the consumer who has the giants fight it out, and you realize there weren't really viable options, possibly because I'm sure businesses gave credit, hey, we're hometown, we're going to give this business, go with us, get your group plan, but if they go away I have both of them. And so right now I understand when I went to my doctor why I'm getting a bill saying, hey, I need you to pay this bill right now, because they're in contract negotiations and cash flow must be a situation. But
thank you, Linda. She's got some points.
Yes. A lot of people are saying, some of the folks that I've spoken with are just like, hey, both of you do a lot of good in this community. Figure it out. That's been what my takeaway from a lot of different people. I was flipping through this notebook that I have right in front of me because of a conversation I had with Therese Wakefield Gamble. She ran for state house and did not win, but she is somebody who has credited Baptist for saving her life because of some health concerns that she had, and she had Florida Blue insurance. So there are just scores and scores of people who are impacted by these negotiations, and while both entities believe an agreement will be reached, when is the question?
Well, we've got another caller here. We've got Ken from Clay County who has a question about, will they still be covered? Ken, sorry.
Yeah, this is Ken from Clay County. My question is, I have Medicare as my primary and Blue Cross Blue Shield as my secondary. Now, I've called both these organizations, and none of them can give me a clear answer on whether or not I'm going to be covered with Blue Cross Blue Shield in or out of network. That's my question.
All right. Thank you, Ken from Clay County.
That is one question I need to settle down with both. I wouldn't want to get on air and say something incorrect, especially at a time like this. I'm not 100% sure about the Medicare part of it. I do know that there are a certain number of services that will be considered in network regardless. There is a list in our story on Jax Today, but I will read a few right now on air. All emergency services, these are all things that will be considered in network on October 1st, regardless of what happens between the two. All emergency services, all office-based and virtual visits and therapies for Baptist Behavioral Health, Baptist Home Place on Demand, Baptist Home Health Care, Baptist Infusion Therapy, Care Spot Urgent Care, Horizon Surgery Center, in outpatient ambulatory services at Baptist Beaches and Baptist South, Jacksonville Orthopedic Center office visit therapies and procedures, Life Wellness Center, as well as Pavilion Respiratory Therapy, which is CPAP machines and supplies for home respiratory care. All of those things will be in network regardless of where the negotiations stand on October 1st.
And again, we're talking with Will Brown, reporter from Jacksonville Today, and Will has been covering the Florida Blue and Baptist Health contract negotiations, which have been very public. I've been around here for 40 years, and I don't remember hearing this much about this kind of contract ever. Normally, we talk about police and firefighters and things like that. So how have the two organizations outside of the news media been communicating? Just, again, to reprise, how have they been telling their customers, their clients, what's happening and what they're doing about it?
Well, Baptist created a landing page of information. It has about a 3.5-4 minute video from Dr. Groover outlining what may happen if this negotiation does not reach an agreement, and then it outlines where people can get more information about their care. A link to that landing page is in our story on Jax Today. Florida Blue has also created a landing page on its website, a link is also on jackstoday.org.
Of course.
Of it from its perspective, as we mentioned earlier, Florida Blue by law had to send out notification that people's insurance may change within a 45-day window. We are within that 45-day window, so that is why people were receiving physical letters from Florida Blue. They've been in negotiations for since February, as we mentioned at the top of the show. My understanding is the last time they've been in negotiations, the two organizations at the table, was the first week of August. That is my understanding as of Monday. They are, kind of in consistent communication, but negotiations the last time were the first week of August.
Well, we've been getting a lot of calls today, and let's go to Curtis on the north side. Curtis, what's your comment or question?
Good morning, my brothers. Man, beautiful show, my brother. Beautiful show. And I'd like to thank Will Brown for his investigating reporting. I love what y'all do at First Coast Connect. Thank you so much. Keep up the good work.
Okay. Thank you. I guess the final question here is we've talked a lot about what these corporations are doing. We've heard from a large number of people who are concerned, but I know you were talking about what the enrollees are saying. What's the response as we're now, let's look at the calendar. We're now 40 days away-ish from that deadline.
Folks are concerned. They're concerned because of the uncertainty. Folks would like certainty. That's what I have been taking away. It's more, y'all, figure it out. That is what I'm hearing from people who have Florida Blue and use Baptist services. Figure it out. And so that's the takeaway.
So that's what people are saying. They're telling these corporations, guys, it's us that you're dealing with, not numbers, and work it out.
Right. Because again, 50,000 people, I mean, if you want a visual, however many people are going to file into Everbank Stadium for the Jags home opener next month, that's how many people are going to be impacted by this negotiation. Now, there are going to be more than 50,000 people in the stadium, but there are other people who may use Baptist services or may think to not use Baptist services if it's out of network. So, and I'm not saying they should or should not, but I'm saying there are, literally fill Everbank Stadium with people, and that is the size and scope of what we're talking about here.
So we got about a minute and a half to wrap. Any final thoughts on this? Because, again, I've sat in the same newsroom. I've heard you meticulously interviewing and preparing to interview some of these CEOs, probably the only news organization to actually physically talk with the people involved. Any final thoughts?
I will be following this story until there's an agreement. I am consistently in communication with both organizations and will do so. I am looking forward to listening to the perspectives of more people about what this means to them, because there are a number of people who have had some health odysseys, and I'm not a wealthy person, so I can tell you that out-of-network costs add up very fast.
Well, Jacksonville Today reporter Will Brown, thank you so much for coming on the program today. Up next, new data on drug overdoses in Florida shows a decline in deaths. According to the HRSA, more than 130 people a day die from opioid-related drug overdoses. We see it on network news all the time. But here in Florida, there has been some hope. Opioid overdose deaths in Florida were down nearly 10% in the first half of 2023. So joining me to discuss this is Mike McCormick, Media Relations and Education Coordinator for the Florida Poison Information Center. Mike, good to see you again.
Hey, Dan, it's great to see you.
We go back a bit, he and I, again. So thanks for being here. Florida experienced a 7% decrease in total drug-related deaths, a 10% decrease in deaths caused by fentanyl, and a 10% decrease in opioid-caused deaths. That data comes from the recently released 2023 Florida Medical Examiner's interim report. One of the main reasons credited for the drop is the wide availability of a reversal medication, naloxone. You've probably heard it by the name of Narcan, and literally, here's a box of it right there, and here is the applicator, if you're watching online, that literally is a one-shot, anybody-can-do-it deal. So Yesterday was National Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day. August 31st is International Overdose Awareness Day. Why are these days important is like the question that maybe we should all know the answer to, but Mike, talk about it.
Well, you know, what's crazy when you start to talk about the number of overdoses is that it's the equivalent when we look at total overdose deaths of more than a 747 crashing in this country every single day. When you take the total number of overdose deaths, which exceed 100,000 in this country, and you start to look at other things like murder and car accidents, when you put those together, they don't equal what's going on in the overdose situation. Since 2015, when we really saw this start exploding, it was about 45,000 deaths a year back in 2015. It's just unbelievable when you look at the significance of it. And, you know, there was a study that just came out that said 1 in 3 Americans are directly tied to a loss from the overdose epidemic. It's one of the biggest problems that we're facing as a country. What is exciting is that when we got this medical examiner interim report for 2023, and please understand this, the data way lags because the toxicology tests take time to run. So we're always 12 to 18 months almost behind on getting the data for where we are. But we have finally seen after years, 2015, 2016, rising all the way through 2023, we are seeing that we've hit maybe a top and we might be on the way back down. We're cautiously optimistic at this point because the numbers are still so high and we need to keep people aware. And again, one of the main reasons is the availability of Narcan. And it's not just that it's available over the counter because it still costs $50. There's also plenty of community groups that are giving it away. But the reality is, if we have this out there, it is so fast and easy to reverse an overdose. And if we can get an overdose reversed, it's an opportunity for us to get that person into treatment. So maybe that they can beat this troubling disease of substance use disorder.
And you know, many people joke that everything I know I've seen on TV. Well, this has been a major news cycle story for years. There hardly goes a week where you don't turn on and see a grieving parent who wishes, last week in fact, who wishes that the place where their child had been, their adult child had been, had this. And the one other point that I remember is that you could give this to anybody at any time, regardless. By mistake, oops, no ill effects to a Narcan shot. It's not deleterious to you, but its response is immediate, and every rescue unit that I'm aware of has a supply of those. But still, if it takes 10 minutes for the rescue unit to get there versus the one that you might have at your house, those 10 minutes might be the difference, right?
Oh, that's exactly it. To your first point, you could give it to me right now. It's not going to hurt me. It is that safe for anybody to use. Rescue units bring it, and they're going to inject it into you when they measure it out. But the way an opioid overdose works is you have these opioid receptors in your brain. And anytime you have pain, those receptors start sending a signal to your body. Why opioids are a good pain-relieving medication is they fill some of those receptors and tell your brain, hey, everything's okay, you don't need to feel pain. The problem is when we get to illicit opioids, they fill too many receptors. And it tells the part of your brain that tells you to breathe, hey, everything's so cool, you don't need to breathe. So people actually die just because they stop breathing. And so if you think about it, your brain can only go so long without oxygen, so that 10 minutes to get a rescue unit there can be too long.
And again, 10 minutes is a good time. I live near a rescue unit, and it's a matter of timing and traffic, et cetera. And of course, if a person is using some kind of illicit drug, they don't know if there's fentanyl in there, which then proceeds to add to, I guess, the effect on your system that they don't know about. And it's too late by the time it starts taking effect. So the numbers show that Florida is a leader in this fight. You and I have talked about this officially, unofficially. I've talked to your predecessors at the Poison Control Center. Much of the credit to the drop is being given to this medication. So is it out there enough? Does everybody who needs to know about Narcan know about it and put it in their house?
To the first question, does everybody know about it? The answer is no. I talk to people on a regular basis. I'm out and about. You know, I think part of it is that there's a stigma People think it's not going to happen to me. It doesn't happen in my neighborhood. But you can pull up the reports from HIDTA, the High Intensity Drug Task Force, and just let's talk about just Duval County right now. We have overdoses in every single zip code. It doesn't matter how much money you make, how big your house is, where you live in town. This drug does not discriminate.
Quickly, what symptoms should we look for if in case our loved one is possibly going into an overdose?
You're first looking for they're not breathing. You can usually see that with maybe blue around the lips or blue under the fingernails. Sometimes you'll hear a gurgling sound in the throat. They call it the death rattle. And if you do come across somebody that's doing that, it's very simple to administer this. We want you to lay them down flat so their airway is open, stick this into their nose and squirt. Pull it out, roll them on their side, very important, and call 911.
Gotcha. And how does poison control fit into this fight right now? And what can you do? What are some of the numbers you can put out?
We do a couple of different things. One, a big part of my job is prevention to work so that we don't even need to use the Narcan. It's education to make sure people are aware of it. Our toxicologists take calls from the rescue units. We take calls from the hospitals. We work on dosing when we get them in to make sure. Because the other thing with Narcan is some of the fentanyl and stuff today, you could give a squirt of Narcan. It's only good for about 30 minutes. The fentanyl is actually stronger than that, and the person can go back into overdose. So we work on that. The poison control number is available to anybody all the time, 1-800-222-1222. It's fast, it's free. And it's completely confidential. And that's something that we really want to stress. It's completely confidential.
All right. Poison control, Mike McCormick, spokesperson and education. Thank you for being here. Up next, says 6 years old, and an English rock band called the Beatles was touring in the U.S., creating what can only be described as a fan frenzy around the nation. In Florida, there was another frenzy, a Category 5 storm called Hurricane Dora, barreling through Northeast Florida 2 days before the Beatles performed at the Gator Bowl, now known as Everbank Stadium. So one of the most historic events to take place in the city of Jacksonville 60 years ago. Joining me to talk about how Florida Humanities, a statewide nonprofit, is planning to commemorate the historic moment in Jacksonville history is Mitch Hemann, archivist at Ritz Theater and Museum, and Susan Towler, board member with Florida Humanities. Okay. I can say I was a kid watching Ed Sullivan in New York City. I was well aware when the Beatles took over Shea Stadium, and I've since learned from many experts, including David Luckin, what the impact was here in Jacksonville. So let's talk about what inspired Florida Humanities to organize this 60th anniversary celebration of the Beatles concert in Jacksonville. Can you share more about Florida Humanities and what its mission is?
Sure, I'll take that one. Thanks, Dan. Florida Humanities is 50 years old, and we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Beatles concert here. But Florida Humanities is the state nonprofit affiliate to the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we exist to preserve and promote history, literature, culture, and the stories of Florida to all Floridians and to our communities. And so we're always looking for those interesting stories that have happened in Florida. We have such a rich history. And our executive director is a musician guy and a music expert. And he said, let's put together a concert and a story discussion with Bob Keeling, who wrote a book, Good Day, Sunshine State, about the Beatles in Florida.
Yeah, I can almost start singing some of that now.
I know, right? Yeah. So we're going to be there September 12th.
Okay, September 12th, what time, where?
7 p.m., September 12th at the Ritz Theater and Museum.
And how important is this to remember this concert? I mean, the stadium obviously withstood the storm. It probably didn't take that much to get it ready, but you're talking transporting in by parent car, thousands of teenagers who want to see the Beatles. And now those teenagers are like me, old enough to want to go back and relive it. So how important?
Yeah, it's really an incredible Jacksonville story. And you mentioned Dora as in terms of a storm. You know, there were so many metaphorical storms happening at this time in the summer of '64. We're talking about the Summer of Freedom in Mississippi, Civil Rights Act being signed in July. In June of '64, MLK being arrested in St. Augustine. You know, St. Augustine and Jacksonville was just a hotbed of civil rights. So all this was happening. And the Civil Rights Act passed, of course, and change doesn't happen overnight. There's a whole lot of trying to figure things out. And then lo and behold, Hurricane Dora comes in, another storm, if you will, tears the place up. And the Beatles, Beatlemania, I mean, you can consider that a storm too. They embark on their first American tour. They're coming to Florida for the first time. It was the only show they performed in the state. They get rerouted to Key West because of the storm. It's just wreaking havoc along the coast here and just tearing up the city and other parts of Northeast Florida. So they're, laying low in Key West until they're finally able to arrive here. Meanwhile, they're learning that this show would potentially be segregated still. And that doesn't sit right with them. John Lennon was very vocal about this all the time. He had said, "We've never performed to a segregated audience. We're not about to now." He said he'd rather lose his appearance money than to do that. So there were a lot of questions that still needed answering. And so they fly in on Ibeson they land in Ibeson Airport. They come to the George Washington Hotel for a quick press conference. I think they expected to stay there, but learned that even that would be a segregated experience. So they stood their ground and they weren't going to stay at the hotel. They had a few snarky comments during the press conference about that. And then were whisked away to the Gator Bowl for a whopping 25 or so minute performance, along with some other acts. And they were gone in the night. They left that evening. So it's very significant to sort of stand their ground, to come in and sort of shake things up and really unify everybody during this time with their music.
So your anniversary event doors open at 6 for book sales, book signings, and museum tours. Then 7 o'clock at the Ritz Theater on 829 North Davis Street with some amazing guests. And that's about the best way to sum it up is who's important there. Why would I want to go, and what music will I hear?
The music is from a Florida cover band called Liverpool Live. They used to perform at Disney, I think at Epcot.
Okay.
And they will play the set from the concert.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and they're terrific. We also hear from Bob Keeling, like I said, who wrote the book. And then a special guest is Dr. Kitty Oliver. She was a teenager and attended the concert and one of the few Black concert attendees there. She has an incredible story about her experience. And so you'll hear firsthand from Dr. Oliver about the day that the concert happened.
I read a story last week that Elvis almost refused to play someplace because his Black backing singers were not going to be allowed on stage with him. So here's another element in the real serious rock and roll vein that there were issues. Well, I want to thank you, Mitch and Susan, for being here and talking about that anniversary of the Beatles.
The Jacksonville Symphony opens its 75th season on September 21st with Mahler's Second Symphony, conducted by Courtney Lewis and featuring a chorus of more than 150 voices joining the Jacksonville Symphony. Visit jacksymphony.org.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
I'm Scott Tong. You probably know the name Nate Silver for his geeky election forecasts. Now he's writing about risk-taking contrarians in Silicon Valley and in Wall Street, and he says their influence is growing. We'll talk to Nate Silver about his book and the state of the election next time Here and Now.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
All those in favor of approving the platform, please say aye. All opposed, say no.
Democrats have a 2024 policy platform covering topics like the economy and immigration, but they wrote it when Joe Biden was the nominee. What do the Democrats stand for with Kamala Harris out front? And will that platform win over voters? I'm Tiziana Deering. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
100 years ago, the U.S. designated its first wilderness area. President Johnson went further by signing the Wilderness Act into law in 1964. It established a network of over 800 federal public lands. What does wilderness mean now? Reporter Marissa Ortega-Welch explores that in her new podcast, How Wild, and she joins us next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
And we are back. If you like a little movement and music to help fuel your Sunday morning, you're in luck. Wildcrafters in the historic Riverside Five Points neighborhood serving up Dance Church this weekend with their popular cava, teas, and alcohol-free craft cocktail menu. Here to share more details with us is Yhang Quintero, owner of Wildcrafters. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
This is a quiet, interactive event. What is happening and what time and where in Five Points?
This is awesome. Thank you for having me here, by
Sure.
the way. So Sunday is the third Sunday of every month. We gather at 10 a.m. at Wildcrafters, and we dance. We use our movement as praying and as a healing modality. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
So 15-minute guided meditation by Matt Colaciello.
Uh-huh.
A 15-minute yoga session to prepare your body for then the immersive dance rave with a DJ,
Uh-huh.
and then a grounding cava or coffee or
Yes.
beverage ceremony. What should people expect?
So you come in, and we talk for a little bit. We sit down, and Matt guide us through a very emotional, releasing type of meditation. He guide us through this expansion feeling that gets us ready to get up and move a little bit. We stretch to get ready for the dance, and then we dance our bodies off for about 45 minutes. So the whole thing is about 90-minute service, as we call it, and we finish with a kava ceremony, which will be the communion, if you will. So Wildcrafters Dance Church doesn't have any religion affiliation or anything like that. So I'm the luckiest man on earth, by the way. I'm graced by attracting all these amazing friends, and I'm proud of every one of them. And so the first one that came along was Carlos, and his name is actually Carlos Quintero. And he came and asked me if I wanted to do a Sunday event where he could DJ. And I didn't know this guy, so my reply to him was like, I will do it only if it's a dance church, which was an idea that I had for months in my head. And he said, well, whatever you do, I just want to be in Wildcrafters. And so then I talked to Katie and Matt, other two friends, both exceptionally smart and professionals. As Matt, it's a mental health counselor in training, almost graduated. And then Katie, it's a neuroscientist. She's actually a doctor of neuroscience. And I approached them with the idea, and immediately they both said yes. And the reason behind it is that we all are aware studies shown the benefits that movement and dance have. They're good. It's good for mental health. It's good for your heart function, your lung function. It has been proven to help people with PTSD, depression, anxiety. And so without much of a conversation to go in depth on that, we just agreed to do it. And the first time there was maybe 10, 12 people. The last time we had it was 29 people, and it was amazing.
So where is Wildcrafters and how did it start?
Wildcrafters, we're located right in the corner of Goodwin and Park near 5 Points.
Mhm.
There's a long, big white building, Soluna Yoga and Spa. They own the building. They're in one corner. We're in the opposite corner of them.
Yep.
And it is a non-alcoholic bar, a non-alcoholic craft
There's a
cocktail
house
bar.
with a large lawn next door, right?
Correct.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I have actually parked in front of you. All right.
There you go.
And when you say non-alcoholic beverages, what are we talking about here? What
So-
will you get served on a Sunday morning?
So at the dance church,
Huh.
we serve kava by itself, which is a beverage made out of a plant originally from the South Pacific Islands. And it has benefits such as it's an anti-inflammatory, anesthetic, analgesic. And in places like Hawaii, they say kava, it's love in a cup. So we serve you up kava, and we serve you up love.
Okay.
And then after that, the bar is open at the end of the service. And we make craft cocktails with stuff that has no alcohol. Entheogenic ingredients, plants, herbs. We also have a series of non-alcoholic spirits. So everything that is good for you and won't mess you up on a Sunday morning.
So after you dance at this Sunday event, what's something cool to drink that gives you energy or has a little bite to it, something that gives you that feel of a cocktail, a craft cocktail, but all the good response? What's a good one?
I mean, you can go for the let's see, you can go for the realness if you're looking for a name of a cocktail when you get there, or you can go for a cava mule, which a lot of people go for that one since it's a little citrusy, has a little bit of a bite, and a lot of people knows what a Moscow Mule is, for example.
And that's an ice cold beverage, perfect.
Ice cold beverage, but I mean, we go from yerba mate to botanical teas to anything in between. So yeah, come check it out.
Well, our dance church is Sunday, 10 a.m. Wildcrafters at 2105 Park Street. Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully you have a lot of people showing up. That is our program. We encourage your feedback and suggestions. You can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. If you missed anything, catch the rebroadcast at 8 p.m. or find the entire archive at WJCT.org or your favorite podcast platform. Let's thank First Coast Connect executive producer David Luckin.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Covering Florida, providing healthcare coverage enrollment assistance. Navigators provide phone and virtual services in every Florida county. 877-813-9115 or coveringflorida.org.
Vice President Kamala Harris will formally accept her party's nomination for president tonight as the Democratic National Convention concludes. I'm Scott Detrow. Join me for live special coverage from NPR News.
Tonight at 9 here on WJCT News 89.9.
This is WJCT News 89.